We're going to talk about building the messages of your brand. That's first and foremost. If you don't have a message, you're going to be lost. If you're going to create a mass movement, you have to have a leader, a cause, and a new opportunity. Let's talk about the cause. Let me give you an example. So Tom Shoes, they give back a free pair of shoes after every single purchase that you make as a consumer. So Tom Shoes would be considered very socially conscious. Those are perfect buzzwords for a retail store. They get a mandate to work with brands who have a really strong social cause, and this is a perfect example. Every cause needs a leader. The more charismatic, the better. You have the different leaders. So you have the charismatic leader, think Elon Musk. He's been vetted, he's proven, and he's fully capable. You have the reluctant hero. This is the most common. Your ordinary person that just is going to dig in, and he's going to do his job, and he's going to do a really, really good job at it just through sheer hard work. You have the adventurer. Somebody who's going to say, I'm going to go and I'm going to see what's out there, and I don't know what's going to happen, and let's just do this together. You have the reporter. They're the gatherer. People that spoke to many people, have read a ton of different books, and already has a good idea of what can be a success and what's going to be a failure. Now the opportunity. Think of Stance socks in 2015. You had people that were decked out from head to almost toe. What was missing? It was the socks. People were using their dress socks for special occasions, but what they weren't doing is wearing legit socks every day of the week. Stance socks filled that void. It was an opportunity not just for Stance socks, but for all the end consumers that wanted a way to differentiate themselves. Let's talk about the one thing. You have the red ocean and the blue ocean. The red ocean is where you don't want to play. That's where all the sharks are. That's where nothing unique happens. So what you want to do is you want to move over to the blue ocean. Take your category and you're going to spiff it up and you're going to put your name on it. Let me give you an example. Candles are an existing product. It's an existing category that's existed for thousands of years. If you're a candle company, what you want to do is you want to focus on maybe an ingredient or something specific of where you make the product. And then you label it, you make it your own, and you make sure that everyone knows that you're number one in that product category. Let's talk about wood wicks. So everybody was using cotton wick. But what they wanted to do is they wanted to make one out of wood. A total differentiator. They were able to move from the red ocean to the blue ocean. That's exactly what you want to do. What you need is a product story. At Anthill, we work with hundreds of brands. We see some that have fantastic product stories and that have a horrible product. And we see just the reverse. People with no product story and they have a fantastic product. You need both. Let me give you a really cool story. There was a mother who had a C-section. She wasn't able to pick up and hold her baby. So the lady developed a product, a portable tub that could fit in any sink. This allowed her to bathe her baby and bond with the baby. So all the good stories come from Hollywood. They have the exact same formula that they tell with all their stories. You need to follow the exact same formula that Hollywood uses to create their backstories. The backstory, the internal, the external desire, the wall, the epiphany, the plan, the conflict, the achievement, and the transformation. You need to find out next who your target customer is. Be very specific on who they are. Most of your consumers want to be this specific person. So let me give you an example of one brand. Invigorate is a brand I own. We've narrowed down the target customer to be very, very specific. A 34-year-old woman driving a Subaru living in San Jose. If you can capture that ideal customer, then most other people who want to be that customer will purchase your products. Whatever you do, don't make your target customer be too broad. I'm going to give you another example. Another brand that I started is Kiva. It's an outdoor apparel company. Patagonia has owned the entire market. The problem with Patagonia is most end consumers aren't going to travel thousands of miles to go to a remote location. So in conjunction with some retailers, we identified our new target customer. We were going to go after the hipster weekend warrior who had a normal, high-tech job, who wanted just to go and explore over the weekends, that lived next to some really cool remote location. This new urban consumer was totally new for the outdoor space, but it involved a major portion of their actual living customers. So now that you have your story and your target customer, you have to make this whole thing cohesive. You need your story to come through your packaging, your website, your samples, everything that you do. So every platform on social media, they all have different types of customers. Every platform has a different approach. Let's talk about a couple examples. So if you're using Pinterest, use long photos and infographics. If you're on Instagram, post tons of lifestyle images. I highly recommend YouTube for product instructional videos and to develop the backstory of your product. For Google, make sure you have a really clear presence so people can search things like your pricing, your story, and more information about your product line. Finally, you need to sell this story to the buyer. Start with your product promotional video, a quick 2-minute video about your product. You can go and you can make this lifestyle related or product related. Touch on all major parts of your story so they have an idea of who you are and what your whole mission is. The buyer needs to know a few things. Is this business competent? Can they ship on time? Do they have a story that's sustainable and lastable? Can they get the message out? Do I have something like this already? The buyer wants to know, can I count on this brand? So now you know what it takes to create a whole mass movement around your brand. Now go take the right steps and make it happen. Let's talk about building brand momentum. Influencer marketing strategies. You need to build your influencers. Some channels are more important than others, but let's take the outdoor channel. If you're going to build a new outdoor brand, you don't just go straight to Outdoor Retailer and pop up a trade show booth. What you need to do is get to the influencers first. The people that are going to be using and touching and feeling your products, those advocates, have to believe in your product first. Go to an intimate event like the Outpost. Talk to the influencers. Have them touch and feel your product. Educate them. Orchestrate a hip camp. Get those influencers to come in a relaxed atmosphere. Spend a few days and get to know you and the brand. Get them to be the believers of your product. They're influencers for a reason. People trust them. They trust their opinions. There's nobody out there better to be an advocate for your brand. Get to know them, get to trust them, have them trust you. We did this strategy with the new brand that I own, Kiva, for the outdoor market. So let's talk about strategies on how to work with influencers. Say you had a product that relieved headaches. You'd want to find those people, those influencers that have talked about having headaches in the past. They can be a perfect advocate for your product. Find influencers on different social media platforms. Some influencers will be strong on some platforms and weak on others. You want to create a symbiotic relationship with the influencer. Scratch their back and they'll scratch yours. Comment on their stuff, share it. Use our brand buyers CRM to keep your content organized. Gather the contact information from your top 100 influencers. Import them into the system. This will help you keep on top of all your relationships. There's a fantastic influencer email formula that you should follow. Personalize your email. Compliment the influencer on something. Tell them why you're reaching out, how your product will benefit them. Provide a specific ask. What do you want them to do? Give them all your social media handles and hashtags. Ask them if they have any questions. Give them a deadline. Thank them, and then follow up. There's a brand that I worked with that relieved headaches. And what they would do is they keep their ear to the ground. Once an influencer would complain about a headache, they would track them down and present them with their product. The influencer then discussed their product with great reviews. There's affiliates and there's sponsors. Affiliates are paid for sales and sponsors are paid up front. So how do you set up an affiliate? You set up an affiliate using Amazon Affiliates, Impact Radius, CJ, or ShareASell. You set up sponsorships using a platform like FameBit. So with an affiliate, you drive sales and they're going to pay you for what they bring. With sponsorships, you pay for an article review, as an example. You might pay for an Instagram post that might cost you $2,000. You may want to find small influencers that can give you big results. Here's a hack. You may want to do piggybacking. Find something that's working and create something off of that. You may want to run a giveaway. One brand that we had asked everybody, what were you doing on spring break? The best responses got the giveaway. They're tagging their friends and they're drastically increasing their following. You may want to do an influencer competition. Grab the best influencers, have them compete. The most referrals and the most sales gets the giveaway. Let's talk about PR. A massive asset to building your brand is leaking out good PR information, good wins to buyers once a week. Build the momentum. Buyers want to see that you're not a stagnant brand. PR will help bring great credibility to your brand. Now be careful. PR agencies range wildly. Some are very effective, some are totally ineffective. Test them out small. Crowdfunding can be an awesome asset for your brand. Crowdfunding can help prepay for your moldings and get all your initial customers. Use platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. The purpose of crowdfunding is not only just to pay for your moldings to find your initial customers, but it also proves your market to the buyers. One important part of crowdfunding is using a PR agency. They can drastically help the awareness and bring customers to buy your first products. Guerrilla marketing is a really cool strategy to use. It can be very costly, but extremely efficient and effective. I'm going to show you a few examples of guerrilla marketing. Check it out. From the Wall Street Bowl to McDonald's French fries and coffee, guerrilla marketing can make a massive splash for your brand. All these tips are critically important to building momentum around your brand. Implement them. Let's talk about the 25 must-haves for retail brands. And to do so, I'm bringing in Jen.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be here and I'm really excited. So let's dive right in.
Artistic imagery is what we're going to talk about first. This is something that's used by very few brands, but it's that extra little touch that most brands don't do that sets them apart from others.
So what are some of the brands that you've loved to work with in the past that have really shown how to do this well?
This example of fugu is fantastic. It shows the pine tree, it shows some dirt on the fugu. It shows exactly where you can and cannot use the product. I really like the Tough Hands picture. I love the colors, I love how vibrant it is, I love how it grays out all the other products. Displays are also critically important. If you're lucky enough to have been given a 4-foot section on a planogram from a buyer, your chance of success on sell-through skyrockets. So take advantage of it. So displays can come in many different formats. So you have things like a clip strip, right, for like lip balm. You have shelf displays that are right next to the checkout lane. You have floor shippers, which sit on the floor in any sort of retail shelf. These are critically important. Your chance of success, if you're given one of these, skyrockets.
Yeah, for sure.
It's also really important to talk about your featured PR to retail buyers. Not only are you getting the push to get the buyers to pick up your product, but you're also getting the end consumer to actually purchase your product. PR has played a huge role for a lot of the products that we've had.
I know a lot of our products have used PR to really get momentum. So like they'll get on a show, for example, like the Today Show, and they'll have somebody on there talking about their product. Not only do they have a great opportunity to sell, but then we can go back in and we can show the buyers like, we were just featured on Today, and that provides a lot of momentum for our retailers. For our brands.
Yeah, it does.
You always want to make sure that you have something fresh to bring to the buyers in your emails, especially in your subject line, so that you can always, intrigue them enough to open up that email. They get thousands of emails every week. And
just bringing that new content is huge.
So even if it's not like a huge win for you to go on the Today Show, even if it doesn't bring in a lot of sales for you, it will always keep things fresh for the buyers so that you can, because buyers have a lot of different buying seasons, it will always keep things fresh for you to come back in and represent it. Like, look, we just had a chance to work on to present our product on
You're just
Today's
sharing
Show.
your wins. I think that's the critically important part about it.
Yeah, showing them that you're bigger than what you are, or that you are gaining momentum in other areas will show them that you are relevant enough to look at.
Here's some examples of dealer and distributor price sheets. These are what you're going to be actually showing to retail buyers. They can look in here and they can see the case packs, the masters, the inners, the MSRPs, the MRPs, all the content they need to be able to figure out if you're a good fit for them. Either have your pricing say dealer or have it be distributor. Stay away from the vague term wholesale.
Because does it confuse
It's
buyers?
completely confusing.
It just makes you look
all
smaller.
All the word means is discount. And so a lot of times it's really confusing and you have to clarify with the buyer anyway. So just use the words dealer or distributor. On-shelf pictures are critically important. Just take some of your products, clear out a shelf, show what your products look like on a shelf so the buyers don't have to guess on what your products would look like, in their set. You can actually just go into like your local store, pull off some products, put on yours, take some photos, so they have a really good idea of what it'll ultimately look like in their store.
Yeah, this has been a great tactic we've always used in the past.
Infographics are an awesome tactic to deploy. It's remarkable how much information you can get across in one quick, simple sheet. Imagine you're a retail buyer and you get hundreds of emails in your inbox every day. If you're the brand, you only have 2 or 3 seconds to relay on your message. An infographic utilizes that 2 or 3 seconds better than anything else there is. So brand lifestyle videos is something that's rarely used, but is extremely efficient. What we did a lot of times is the first couple minutes that we'd meet with a retail buyer at their corporate office is we'd pull out a 2 or 3 minute video that really explained the brand, who we were, where we're going, what our values were.
Yeah, it also like infuses a lot of energy into the meeting so that they can capture like a sense of what it's going to be like to have your product in their on their shelves.
It's just that little extra oomph that totally differentiates you from everybody else.
Pushes you over the edge.
It does.
Yeah.
So check out AntHillMotionProductions.com, for example.
Yeah, we've actually already done a few videos like this for some of our people. So now we're offering that to some of our clients as well. So if you are interested in creating a lifestyle video and you need somebody to help you do it, that is something that Anthill Motion Productions offers.
Yeah.
And we can put a link in the references for you.
You can take a risk on hiring somebody else, but Anthill Motion Productions will do as good of a job as any. As e-commerce grows and a lot of sales are done online, product instructional videos and what's actually in the box is becoming more and more critically important.
It's just going back to simplifying everything. When I, in my personal life, am trying to find, instead of like reading the instructions for things that I buy online, I oftentimes go to YouTube videos and just watch somebody in a 5-minute clip. And I'm sure you guys are the same.
There's many different facets with product demo videos. You could go from like unboxing, see what's inside, to the setup on how to prepare and how to use the product, how to use it, how it compares to other products in the category. There's even tons of really good videos out there that'll actually cut open the product to see what either the ingredients are or the components are inside.
You know, that reminds me of Blendtec videos. I'm sure you guys know the high-powered blenders. Something like that would really set you apart and also bring an element of fun to a buyer's world where they're constantly in the doldrums of boring paperwork mostly.
Yeah.
It would really set you apart and bring a
Totally.
lot of energy like the lifestyle videos that we mentioned earlier.
So feature and benefit sell sheets are awesome. They're also really important to do. They want to see exactly where are we going to use this product, how's it going to benefit us, right? For the end consumer or for even for the buyer.
Yeah, it's one more step to easily break down what the buyer's looking at. One more thing to make it simple so that they can understand at a glance.
Lifestyle images are an awesome part of what a brand does. So one tip when using lifestyle images is use professional models.
Mm-hmm.
Buyers can tell really quickly if you're showing pictures of your family or if it's done just with D footage. Just do it, pay for it, and do it the right way the first time.
Yeah, that's one of the most fatal flaws for people when they're starting their brand. These images you're going to be using in your emails to these buyers to kind of capture their attention and keep them interested.
Yeah.
If they've opened one of your emails first and they've seen, a beautiful image, they're going to take you, number one, as a more legitimate brand. But number two, it'll even if they don't respond to that email, you'll start building up legitimacy in their mind, and you'll also start creating curiosity in their mind.
And a lot of times what you can do is you can take different photo shoots and not use them all at once, but just trickle them out through the year and have them overlap with other photo shoots that you're trickling out through the year. So not all photo shoots are at the beach, and then all of a sudden 3 months later are in the mountains or whatever it is. Just space them out evenly, and the buyer will never know the difference.
So it's really important to talk about lighting in your lifestyle images. The most trendy images nowadays have a lot of light in them and a lot of white backgrounds. So if you are indoors, that's something to consider. You don't want any dark images. They look more clunky and less professional, in my opinion.
So you can use your lifestyle images across all different platforms, from your retail packaging to your sell sheets to even your presentations to the buyers. It's not like you're just spending a ton of money on content that's only going to be used on one platform. So brands that have a good sized budget will actually have a media schedule. If you're fortunate enough to be promoting your product across a lot of different mediums, then obviously you want to present that to the buyers. Outdoor creative is another really important part of what you're presenting. What's going to be on the billboards, what's going to be on, in the subways. If you have a big budget, it's a great way to build information about your product, right? And build your awareness.
Yeah, I would say it's not necessary, especially in the early phases. You might not ever need to spend money on outdoor creative.
That's right.
Category, but
for national brands, right?
For national brands, it's a great idea, and eventually you might get there. But if you don't ever get there, I think the biggest bang for your buck would be your lifestyle images are number one. It has to be. Those are must-haves. And number two, if you could have a budget, I would put in your lifestyle videos. Lifestyle videos pack a huge punch.
So clinical comparisons, sometimes done through universities, sometimes done through third parties, are critically important. If you have a product that it might be something that you use on your skin or something that you digest. So just keep that in mind, that you're going to almost always have to have a clinical comparison done if you're in certain product categories.
That being said, it's always helpful to have a comparison even on your product packaging so that it's easily
Understood by
the
consumer.
end buyer, by the end consumer.
So one-page sell sheets is like Retail 101. These are must-haves for every single brand out there. You're going to be using these all the time, introducing products to the retail buyer.
What kind of things do you have to have on a retail sales sheet for your buyer?
Well, yeah, so like product cost, what is the MSRPs? What are some of the major bullet points like features and benefits? This is just kind of really basic level. Every single brand has to have this stuff. So most retail brands sample to retail buyers. It's highly recommended. So some brands don't do it, and that's fine. But you're going to have a big advantage if you are one of those that samples. Now, for those products that actually do sample, some will be sloppy in their presentation. They'll just package the product in a UPS box and send it out there, and it'll come out damaged. Just don't do it. It's far better that you don't sample than to sample in a really incompetent way. So what I would highly recommend is having a specific box built for the retail buyer. Have instructions on the very front, have a thank you note, and really put your best foot forward.
And if you don't have a budget for something like that, a thank you note and a nice tissue paper wrapped package would be great for your buyer. Also, there's a lot of brands that don't have that have an extra expensive product. So in cases like that, what should they do?
Well, I would still strongly suggest sampling, but just put like a prepaid FedEx or UPS slip in there and just tell them you're expecting the product back. I mean, they have to see your product either way, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it gets really costly.
It's always better to just send a sample, even if you don't have the extras in that Jeremy's talked about. Write a thank you note, package it up nicely with some tissue paper, and you're going to be looked at more seriously by the buyers. They're going to appreciate you, and they're going to be remembering you.
Yeah, just think of it as like a cost of doing business. Try not to skimp out on that side. If you have a low budget, just keep that in mind. This is not an area that you should be eating into.
Of course, you don't need to sample boutiques or smaller mom and pop stores.
Yeah.
You never sample those people because they have the authority to buy right on site or right in the moment.
They just don't have the purchasing power to justify the samples typically.
Yeah, so you want to be conscious of that and don't let people take advantage of you, but definitely send the samples to the big boys, send the samples to the ones that you really think would make a difference for your business.
Great point. So a lot of retail buyers want to see the sell-through, right? They want to see case studies. How did you perform units sold per store per week in a different retailer? So I highly recommend showing some real-world examples of what they should be able to expect if they purchase your product.
Do you have anything that comes to mind with case studies that have worked in the past? Or
Yeah, absolutely. So we've worked with like a toothpaste brand, for example, out of Australia. And they did really, really well when entering a new market into a different country through a really prominent retail store. And they ran some really hard promotions. They got some really good, strong numbers. And they were able to present their best case scenarios to the next retailer. Mm-hmm. That really, really helped them. Promos aren't just for the end consumer. It's also for the retail buyers. For example, if you have Black Friday or Cyber Monday, run a promotion for the retail buyers. Say, hey, here's a free case pack if you send us Venodox within this specific period of time.
Yeah, we've had a lot of success doing that. And the buyers, I think it's a nice spin, something refreshing to kind of give you an edge to open that email.
Yeah, a lot of people just think, again, promotions are just for the end consumer.
Yeah, a lot of people don't even realize that, like, they won't really think that a buyer would even care that there's a discount.
It lets buyers hit the numbers that they need to hit, right? So if they get free case packs, that's a big motivation for a buyer to pick up your product line. Retail packaging is huge and critical. Not all brands are as fortunate as Nike where they can just have a really clean look. Like you think about the swoosh, or you think about
the
Apple,
iPhone, yeah.
And it's just a white package with a little logo. Mm-hmm. Well, unless you've already spent hundreds of millions of dollars through decades, you don't have that luxury. A lot of brands have to be very educational based on their retail packaging. So just have a clean look, get rid of things like QR codes and made in America flags and clutter words.
Don't be too wordy. That will be a huge detriment to you.
Lifestyle images are also really important if you're going to put on the sides of your retail packaging. Windows, so on the front of your packaging is also really important. People can see the product before they actually purchase.
A lot of times it's really great to have infographics or the comparisons like we talked about earlier on your box because it's self-explanatory. It's see it at a glance and understand it. And people are just like the buyers, they want to see it and understand it right at the first, 6 seconds.
Yeah. Product only photos that look like they're shot on white background are really important for e-commerce, right? There's a lot of really clean websites where they just want to see the product without a bunch of the lifestyle, a lot of the background in it. So think of Amazon. A lot of your products you're going to be seeing on Amazon or on Overstock or any of these others are just going to be, they're going to be files that look like they're shot on white background. Those are needed for a lot of different platforms, a lot of e-commerce platforms that aren't your own. So that's a must-have. This is a must-have for retail brands. You should have an assortment page from all the different SKUs and all the different colors that your products are going to be sold in. Just make sure that there are easy comparisons for retail buyers to see. So they can see, okay, what does the shade look like? What does the size look like? What are the differentiators?
You've worked with a brand in the past who had way too many options in terms of color.
Yeah.
And that can really
total SKU counts. Yeah.
Trip you up. Especially if you're putting a lot of money in your inventory, that can really trip you up because a lot of times buyers don't have enough shelf space to showcase every color that you have or every option of pattern that you have.
Yeah.
You really need to be considering that. Just keep it simple. Do your top 3 colors.
That's a great point. There's studies that have been done. The less options people have, the more satisfied they are after they purchase. They're not re-guessing or re-questioning themselves.
Yeah,
on
that's
the purchase.
true. A lot of times it instills doubt in a person's mind if there is too much. Oftentimes I go into a store and I get too overwhelmed. I just shut down and I leave. I don't even consider my options. So keep it simple so that people can really see actually the product and not be overwhelmed by the options.
Yes, don't over-skew your assortment.
And don't put inventory into a lot of SKUs.
3D renderings are a whole different look for buyers. A lot of times they have a concept of what a product will look like in a store. And so what you typically do is find a designer, take a picture of what the shelf currently looks like, clear it off, and render with the shape and size of your product of what your products will look like on the shelf. And this is particularly useful if you have a store in a chain that you're going to be going into that's not easily accessible to you. They might be in a different state, for example.
Yeah, it's also important to do 3D renderings of your displays so that the buyers can really get a feel for what it's going to look like on their shelf or how much space it might take up.
So point of sales are also very important for the end consumer. It's the decision of when an end consumer is deciding whether to buy your product or not. So take a lot of time and effort when you're creating your point of sale for the end consumer. Like a BOGO ad, a buy one, get one. Make sure that it's really catchy. If an end consumer only has 2 seconds to see your product on a retail shelf, pop off the shelf for them. Show sell-through stats. So if your brand has had good sell-through from other retailers, they need to know exactly what to expect from your brand. Showcase that. Give them the best case scenarios.
Sometimes a lot of sell-through looks really low, but it's really important to have those numbers. Give me an example of a really low sell-through, a really low sounding sell-through, but that's actually a really good number.
Yeah, so for example, chapsticks. Each different SKU might sell 2 units per store per week. That's actually a really high number. It doesn't sound like much, but it's very, very strong. Most sell-through is typical between a quarter of a unit per SKU sold per week to 1 unit sold per SKU per week.
And are those numbers based on that buyer's category, or
Yes.
are those based on the whole store?
Those are based totally on the type of product and the type of store. So if you're in like a TJ Maxx, sell-through might be really, really high. If you're in a Bed Bath & Beyond, sell-through units per store per week will be really, really low. It just really depends on how many customers shop at that store per day. And different products have higher sell-through rates than others.
When you talk to a buyer, when you're negotiating whether or not you're getting that spot on the shelf, they'll talk to you about what their expectations of sell-through are. Have realistic expectations when you do have that spot on the shelf, but also realize that buyers will have a review at least once a year, and they'll expect those numbers to hit at or even just slightly below what they've set up for you once you started working with them.
It's a good example. A lot of brands that are just starting out might just go to a buyer and they'll say, yeah, we expect to sell 30 fishing poles through every store every week. And a buyer looks at that number and they think these guys are ridiculous. Our expectation for that category is a half a unit per SKU per week. Yeah. So just know what your expectations are for the specific retail store.
And don't think that just because they're asking for a low number that it's going to be easy.
So we've talked about the 25 must-haves of your retail brand. Everything from retail videos to sell sheets to infographics. I just really feel like if you're going to put forward your A effort, try to do as many of these as you possibly can.
Yeah, and like I've spoken about earlier in the video, if you can just focus on the lifestyle images and the lifestyle video, those will be huge bangs for your buck.
Those are probably the two most important.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about 12 mistakes that most brands make when developing a product for retail. Let me show you an example of the first mistake. This is a pretty cool product, isn't it? The problem is, this is a direct-to-consumer product only. If it has any retail presence at all, it's going to be through a niche store, some destination store that somebody has to drive to. If you have a product that's already very expensive, has all the bells and whistles, then you can overcome a couple of the issues. It's going to have a power display to explain what the product really is. It's going to need trained, assisted sales associates that are going to have to explain the product before a consumer buys it. Let's talk about what a buyer is looking for. Number one, a buyer is looking for dollars sold per inch of space. This product, simply said, is way too big. Number two, a self-explanatory product. Something that doesn't need a ton of education to move the product off the shelf. Number three, a retail price point within the reach of most of the end consumers. Number four, a complementary product, not a cannibalizing product. Think add to market basket strategy. Is this product going to be adding extra dollars out the door for the retailer, or is it just cannibalizing an already existing product that they're already selling? What are you doing when you create a new product for retail? You're creating a slightly different and better mousetrap. It's very rare that you create a product that hasn't existed before, or in a category that hasn't existed before. You're just making better modifications. At Anthill, we deal with hundreds of brands that have all created very slight differences and have really capitalized on those differences. For example, we work with a baby bottle, where when a baby squeezes the bottle from down here, it squirts up into their mouth, instead of a baby leaning back and having it slowly drip through. This is a slightly better mousetrap. They're not reinventing anything. Everybody knows how to use a baby bottle, but they're making it easier. It's an easier play for the end consumer. What is the goal of your product? Are you the leader, the innovator, or are you a mass product? Solidly define who you are and what your goal is. We deal with many brands that are the innovators of the industry. We also deal with many products that are just trying to get the most volume sold. What is your goal? Who do you want to be? What's your mission? Most brands aren't brandable. And what do I mean by that? That means it doesn't really matter what the product looks like or how it's displayed. Most brands just have a product. Is that good enough for you, or do you want to actually have a brand and create a lifestyle around your brand? Are you the market innovator, or are you the volume leader? Even Apple has problems being the innovator all the time. Be realistic on the price point of your product. Do you have an MSRP of $50 but have a 10-cent item? Don't try to rip off your end consumer. How do we develop a reasonable price point? Well, what you do is you work backwards. First, have a survey and figure out what end consumers are willing to pay for your product. Next, subtract the retailer's margins that they need on their side. Typically, it's about 50 points as a usual starting point. This will give you your dealer price list. This is what stores are purchasing the product for. Make sure after your dealer price list that you're making at least 50-point margin on your side in order to be healthy. That'll cover other costs, including employees, overhead, and paying for the product itself to be made. I'm going to give you an A+ strategy on developing a product and making sure you're hitting it at its peak performance. We worked with a brand whose executive came from Coca-Cola. Her strategy when starting out this new brand was, let's find an emerging trend and let's couple that with a stagnant category, something that hasn't been defended for a long time or properly innovative. When you can dissect a channel that hasn't been defended properly for a long time and hasn't had innovation and merge it with an emerging trend, you have a winner. For this Coca-Cola executive, she found that the emerging trend was single dose usage for products, small shots. That was the key. It was doing very well in other channels. She used this trend and put it into a stagnant category, which is over-the-counter medicines. And what was the result? A single shot of liquid medicine that a consumer could use per application. I'm going to show you an example of a brand that we started, Invigorate Essential Oils. We knew that essential oils were an emerging trend. It was becoming mass. But we also knew that there was a stagnant category, which was car air fresheners. This category hadn't been changed or altered for decades. You know the ones, the familiar chemical trees that hang off of the mirror. We were going to innovate and we were going to make it better. So we made an essential oil car diffuser. We wanted people that were using their essential oils from their homes and putting it on their skin to be able to be consistent in their own life and take their products into their car for use, instead of using the chemical products they're already using in their car. Now, what type of products do I recommend you stay away from? Constantly changing technology. Take cell phone cases. Cell phone cases can change every single year. What are the problems with that? It's high inventory. It's quick liquidations. It's extremely expensive. If you're going to work with Apple, for example, you have to have a factory that's MFI certified. What a headache. It's highly competitive. There's very little margins, and you have to take back tons of good from retailers. The new product release happens so quickly that you simply don't have time to monetize your already developed product. I highly recommend staying away from Me Too products. What are Me Too products? They're a product that has no barrier to entry. Take lip balm or take battery banks. Anybody can make any of these type of products. And in fact, you'll have buyers reference you all the time saying, oh man, not another battery bank. If you do get in, the buyer is going to be cannibalizing your margins. They know there's too much competition and other brands that are willing to take your spot in line. Don't sell a product that somebody can simply throw their logo on and start selling again. You have to have innovation. If you're going to be a battery bank, if you're going to be a lip balm, you're going to have to make a substantial change that's going to differentiate yourself from everybody else. Put a good spin on it. The retail packaging and the size of the product is a really big deal for retailers. Again, they look at dollars sold per inch on the store. Could they fit multiple products in that little spot that you're taking up? 2 products for retailers is always better than 1. Here's an example of one product that we had. Many of the end consumers wanted this small 6-inch version. Others wanted the tall and the large combo. What they didn't want was the single tall product by itself. It simply took up too much room. They could monetize multiple products in that same space that this one product was taking up. This is a Shark Tank product that did very well in retail. It was specifically designed to get every last drop of liquid makeup out of a jar. The smaller the product is, the easier it is for the buyer to justify the space it's going to take up on the shelf. Let's think about the value add. Does your product bring value to the buyer that it didn't have before? Here's a story about Invigorate, one of our brands. Drugstores already sell essential oils, so an essential oil car diffuser is a value add for them. It's adding dollars out the door. This is called the add to market basket strategy. I'd like you to take special note of the packaging here. We have a beautiful, aesthetically pleasing package. It has a window so customers can see the product inside. It uses icons on the bottom of the packaging to show where the product can be in use. It has beautiful lifestyle images on the side and on the back. It is clean and it is appealing to the end consumer. Fantastic products in the buyer's eyes are products that are incremental sells, products that have to be reordered and used up again and again by end consumers. A razor blade is a fantastic example of this. These type of products bring customers back in the store day after day, week after week. So here's the challenge. Think of any component in your product that could be changed out. A common strategy for selling products into retail is to have a loss leader. You have a product that's going to get you in the door with retailers. For an example, this printer, this is your loss leader. This printer does not cost $79.99 and it has not the typical retail value of the printer. Where this company is making its money is on the ink, the reorders over and over and over again. These brands know that getting a product in the store is the key. They know if they can get the end consumer to purchase the product, that the residual money is here to follow. So remember these 12 tips. Avoid the mistakes that brands make when trying to develop a product for retail. Capitalize on the good and get rid of the bad. In this section, we're going to talk about how to correctly price your products for retail. All channels have different price points they're going to be looking for from the brands. Let's talk about keystoning. Keystoning is 50% margins for the dealer. Essentially what they're doing is they're doubling the cost that they purchase the product for from you and selling it to the end consumer. This is a typical practice in quite a few different channels. Outdoor, sporting goods, drug, those are all main channels that keystone products. What is MSRP? Manufacturer's suggested retail price. This is the price that most consumers are aware of. These are the prices that are most commonly used and seen. The next is MAP pricing, minimum advertising price. Some retailers will list their product as an MSRP, the suggested retail. Others will want to discount it, say maybe 20%. As long as they're advertising it, that is their minimum advertised price for the product. Where is MAP used? Well, think about circulars. Think about anywhere online where a retailer is discounting your products. Is the lowest price that a brand will allow a retailer to sell their product for. Let's talk about MRP, minimum retail price. What is minimum retail price and how is that different from the other retail prices? The MRP is the total bottom number that a retailer could ever sell your product for. It's typically reserved for outlets like wholesale clubs, like Costco, Sam's, and BJ's. Let's discuss pricing per channel. What is required and what's expected? The bottom of the barrel, price-wise, is the wholesale clubs. These retailer outlets request between 12 and 14% margins. If you sell a product to a store for 88 cents, they'll sell it for $1. Very low margins. That's because wholesale clubs make the vast majority of their money off of the memberships. The next channel with the second lowest margin requirements is consumer electronics. You're talking mid to high 30s, low 40%. This is because there's high components and high marketing dollars that are required for this channel. Grocery is typically the third lowest. These consumable products are in high demand for end consumers. After this, you're getting into the channels that keystone your products. This is most typical. So you have drugstores, outdoor stores, sporting goods channels. Most stores that keystone are doubling the price that you sell the product to them for. Convenience stores and stores that are found in the mall typically have higher margin requirements. Think 75%. A store found in the mall, for example, needs to pay high rent. Therefore, they have to have higher margin requirements. A store like Costco has very low margin requirements simply because they have so many customers that walk through the store each and every day. A distributor typically takes 20 to 25% margins because they're going to be selling it to another retailer. The retailer now doesn't need 50% margins. They'll take 40% margins simply because they don't have to spend near as much time setting up a new vendor in their system. So let's discuss shipping. Who pays for shipping? Well, typically the rule of thumb is international distributors, their prices are so low that they're suggested to pick up the product from your warehouse, FOB origin. Domestic distributors, they have the next to lowest tiered pricing. They, however, are growing accustomed to wanting products delivered to their distribution or their cross docks. What is FOB? It's freight on board. It's where the transaction switches hands. So FOB origin is when they pick up products at your place. FOB destination is when products moved liability to their cross docks or to their distribution center. Always give distributors two price lists. One with prepaid shipping, shipping that you pay for, say 7%, and another one, the cost in which they'd be paying to pick it up from your location. So now you should know how to correctly price your products for retail. Think about your own margin requirements. Think about if you're hitting the numbers required in order to make a profit for yourself. If not, go back to the components, go back to your manufacturer. Cut where you need to make sure that you're making the correct margins on your end.
We try to set the right expectations as far as the timeline that it does take to get into retail. Obviously, the smaller stores like the mom and pop shops, those are more frequently landed accounts, and the bigger chains, like for example, your Dick's Sporting Goods, your Neiman Marcus, or your Dillard's, it does take a while longer to actually get those accounts landed. Usually how that starts is you make that initial phone call, you find the right buyer. As soon as you find the right buyer, you're going to want to send them your assets or what you have with the brand. So whether that be your catalog or your price points, the next step would be after that is to send them an actual sample in the store. So we want to make sure that they're able to physically see and touch your products. After that, it usually takes a while for them to actually feel comfortable with your product, to have that reviewed, and for them to actually place an order. We always want to give them a week or so after the samples have arrived to the store, just for them to actually have time with the product, for them to review it, to see if they really like it before reaching back out to them. So some of the most important feedback is what you're going to hear from your buyer as soon as they've reviewed your products, whether that be concerns with pricings or packaging or whatever that may be. You're going to want to make sure that you take note of that and that you're listening to the buyer and what he has to say. One strategy that we frequently use here in retail it's called the party strategy. This is when a buyer hasn't really pulled the trigger on your product or hasn't placed an order right away in that moment. You're going to want to build credibility or kind of name drop these other store locations that you're currently in, just to make it sound like it's the right thing to do. Buyers are always going to want to be 100% sure with their decision, so showing them the success that you've had with these other companies, wherever you may be, is a good strategy to use to give them confidence to pull the trigger and to place an order with your product. With the party strategy, any wins that you can share with the buyer, whether that be PR wins or any recognition that you have received publicly, any milestones that you've achieved as a company, that's always recommended to share. That's the strategy that we use to get into retail. Just remember that retail does take time and to be patient with it.
Let's discuss what I call bulletproof retail strategy. There are 108 retail channels in all of retail. Ask yourself the question, what is your lowest hanging fruit? Which channel is the home for your product? Your product most likely doesn't belong in one channel, but there is probably just one or two channels that are the best opportunity for success. That's where your best sell-through is going to come from. If you're just starting a brand or thinking about starting a brand, here's some advice. Pick a product that can be sold to multiple channels. An example of what not to do is to find a product that only belongs in one channel. Think about an office chair for an example. There is a very limited number of stores you can sell this to, and realistically, only one real channel, office supplies. Your chance for success in selling this product all hinges on getting into just one of a couple stores that even exist. Compare that to something like wearable tech, something that could be sold to the sporting goods, to the outdoor, to the consumer electronics, to water sport, to surf, and many other channels. Your chance of growing a successful brand in wearable tech is so much greater than one of creating an office chair. It's critically important to data mine the information of the buyers you're going to be contacting. Let me give you a very important tip. Don't purchase and don't use a purchased organized list sold by a third party. Bad data will blacklist your URL. It will completely ruin all of your outreach for everything else you do for your company. Spend the necessary time data mining. And if you're not going to data mine, use Anthill Retail. At Anthill Retail, last year alone, we spoke to 33,000 retail buyers of the 105,000 active buyers in our system. That is 31% of the total active buyers that we found in US retail. If you know other brands that have had success selling to certain stores, work with that brand. Identify who those buyers are. Make the hard phone calls to the corporate offices. Ask the operators who the buyers are. You may have to guess their email address formats for that company. That's okay. It will take time. Do the necessary work. Let me tell you the best method of getting your product out there fast. It's a very romantic idea to sell to a very targeted, specific retail outlet. However, this is not the best practice for selling to retail. I highly recommend blasting to all channels and getting on the radar for all the specific buyers that you plan on selling to. You want to get on all the calendars of all the different buyers because they will all purchase at different times in the year. Blast to channels, find out what the opportunities are first. You can always decide later if they're a good fit for your company. At least start the dialogue. Here's a recommended tip. If you want a buyer to respond to your brand, loop in their colleagues. A colleague referral from one of their coworkers is going to get a response to your brand 100% of the time. I'm going to give you an example of the best performing initial outreach for a brand that we've run in our system. Check out this email that we had for Invigorate. Take note of the subject bar. It has a call to action. Attention, essential oil, GM buyer. There's no spammy content in this. This is a professional business to business email. This tells the buyer immediately that you know the industry, you know the category names of the buyers. The second part of the subject bar, our essential oil laptop and car diffuser, tells them exactly what the product is before they even open up the email. Check out the body of the email. It is quick and is simple. It is one paragraph long. It calls out specifically the retailer's name. Only a few lifestyle photos are found within the body of the email. It ends with a call to action. If you could refer me to the appropriate buyer, I would greatly appreciate it. This email received 72 responses from over 50 different chains in a matter of only 3 hours. Let's go over the best practices for the subject bar. Use the appropriate vocabulary for the industry. Use terms like category manager or buyer. Use buzzwords like slot in, review date, POG review. We've included these in the resource section of this course. Another good practice for the subject bar is identifying expected sell-through rates per store per week. You may want to put a specific day of the week in the subject bar. It's a call to action. You may want to put a phrase like our conversation history so far. This prompts the buyer to open up the email. You may want to call out a specific date when you know the review is happening. A good tip would be something like call request, Friday. You may want to outline conversation history. Do not make this gimmicky or spammy. You're not offering 20% off of anything. Stay away from exclamation points, or the words off, or the word sell. If you put the word sell or put an exclamation point, it's going to end up in their junk folder and they're not going to open it. Now we're going to talk about best email practices. Only 24% of sales emails are opened. Here's a tip. Use Boomerang. See what buyers are opening your email and what the frequency is. Emails written at a third grade reading level are 36% more likely to get a reply than those written at a college reading level. Subject lines with 3 to 4 words are the most effective in getting responses. Don't just provide information in the email and on calls, request for information too. These emails have a 50% higher likelihood to move the dialogue. Always request information. Ask when the category review date is. Ask when they'll be making decisions. Ask how many total products they're going to be cutting out of their planogram and how many they're going to be adding to their planogram. Boldly and kindly ask them if you can send them samples and to what address you should send them to. How do you eat an elephant? You do it one bite at a time. Sales are made phone call by phone call, email by email, trip by trip. There is no replacing hard work. You need to get on the radar of every single buyer. So when your product review comes, you're on the top of their mind. It's critically important to share new content with them every single week. Trickle out your PR wins or every single time you pick up a new chain. You need to change up the content every 1 to 2 weeks. Buyers know when you have a stagnant brand. Don't become that brand. If your product requires heavy marketing, you're going to have to start with a specific region in the United States if you can't afford a nationwide launch. Here's what I recommend. Reach out to the entire channel or multiple channels. Then, after you know which retailers are interested in you, then pick the top 2 or 3 in that region to roll with. Throw your marketing dollars into that specific, tight region where the end consumers can be bombarded by your brand. Make sure your sell-through is high with that retailer before moving on to other regions with other retailers. What size of retailers should you be going after? That totally depends on the budget of your brand. At Anthill, we deal with brands that are very well capitalized. We also deal with brands that just aren't there yet. That's okay. Big, well-established brands have the luxury of just going after mom and pop boutiques and having a really dialed-in, sophisticated strategy. Most brands, however, need cash flow and they need cash flow now. In this scenario, go straight to the large retailers, get capital, and then move on to the smaller chains. I'm going to give you a tip on how to build momentum so buyers take you serious. In retail, buyers want to know who else is coming to the party. Share with them your social media wins, your influencer wins, your PR wins. Tell them of stores that you've landed recently. If you've been promoted on a local or national PR outlet, share those wins. With many of the best-selling brands that I've been a part of, we didn't have much sales at the very beginning. It took a long time feeding good wins until the buyers took us seriously. I remember a conversation I had with one of the buyers at H-E-B Grocery. Their reply was simply, "Okay, you've convinced us. Here's the vendor setup docs." Simply said, in the H-E-B example, we wore them down. This buyer committed to us simply because she knew we weren't going away. She knew that other people were excited about us too. I'm going to introduce to you now the best practices when calling a retail buyer. We've done some fantastic studies here at Anthill Retail. We found out that it takes 18 phone calls to make a sale in retail. That's a lot of effort. There's no shortcuts here. Depending on the channel, it might take 6 phone calls to actually get a hold of a buyer and have a meaningful dialogue. Get to know the buyer on a personal level. on scheduled follow-up calls. Use the first 2 to 3 minutes to get to know their likes and their interests. Build that relationship. It's going to give you so much better of an advantage the next time you talk to them if you have reference points of your previous discussion. Buyers are extremely busy. Ask them at the beginning of each call, how are they doing on time? Buyers greatly appreciate that you have awareness of their busy lives. Use collaborative words like we, us, our, and together. Those are 10 times more effective in closing than using words like you, I, me, or your. Writing a detailed recap to a buyer after a phone call greatly increases your chance to land the sale. Let's talk about sample policy. You have 48 hours at most to ship off a sample that's been requested from a buyer. We see examples of brands all the time that simply don't take the time and effort to ship off samples in a timely manner. If this is the case with your product, change that as quick as you can. This is the easiest thing to fix with the greatest return. Send them tracking information on the sample. Here's a great tip. The moment that you receive notification that sample did arrive to that buyer, email the buyer and let them know. A buyer has tons of samples that have arrived in their offices. Get them aware that your product is in their offices now. Don't send damaged boxes. Make sure that you have packing peanuts and that the presentation is sharp. Separate yourself from all the other products being sampled that day. Check out the resource section to see other great examples of sample boxes. Now that you've started the dialogue with the buyer and they've received samples, let's figure out next steps. This is the best time to ask questions. Figure out what sells well in their sets and what does not. Figure out how many products they're going to be deleting and how many they anticipate picking up. Ask them about new trends in specific product categories. Ask them about products that are trending down as well. Let's discuss vendor docs and order forms. They range widely in retail. Some retail outlets that are small won't require vendor docs. Just a couple of pages about your company profile will do. Other larger retail outlets require very substantial and in-depth vendor docs. Don't worry and don't get scared. The majority of the information found in these vendor docs is not required. Be brave and ask the buyer what's important information and what is not. Fill out the most important information first and then ask the buyer if there's anything else. The odds are you can save hours upon hours in not filling out unnecessary parts of the vendor docs. This is bulletproof retail strategy. It helps you get identified by the buyers, it helps you be taken serious by the buyers, and it helps you land that specific account. Let's discuss now how to pitch to regional chains and big box buyers. I'm going to tell you a story about the first time I made a pitch to a retail store. I went to a regional outdoor sporting goods store, Sportsman's Warehouse. And when I was there, I was a little taken back by how informal it was. I was taken by the buyer wearing just a plaid typical shirt into a small little office. There was papers everywhere. I sat down and just had an informal dialogue with the buyer. We discussed the product line and what their needs were, and 10 minutes later I left. There weren't a ton of deep penetrating questions. I'm going to compare that with a meeting I had with Walgreens, notoriously one of the hardest retailers to sell through. I wasn't fully prepared for the in-depth questions that I was about to face. We went into a larger conference room. They had a category analyst with the buyer. I was asked really difficult questions regarding the ingredients of the product. I came away from the meeting feeling like I had to do a lot more research if I was going to reapproach this buyer. I was then able to arm myself with all these potential new questions for other buyer meetings that I had with them, as well as with other retail outlets. Each store has its own culture. I'm going to give you the example of Target. Target has a median age of 26 years old for their employees. Located in the Nicollet Towers in downtown Minneapolis, their culture is much more professional than a typical retail buyer culture. In fact, 6-7 years ago, one would have to wear a suit and tie just to be let into the building. Now they've relaxed their culture a little bit, but still, it's apparent just how top-notch and youthful this culture really is. I want you to compare two different other cultures from the same channel, REI versus Cabela's. REI is the Teva wearing customer. This customer is more affluent. The culture in this company is much more radically different than the culture at Cabela's. Urban Outdoorsy versus hook and bullet outdoorsy. Think Tevas and paddle boards versus bullets and camo. Dress appropriately. Try to present to them what fits within their culture. When you have a meeting at one of these corporate offices, keep your PowerPoint to 10 slides max. Respect the buyer's time at these meetings. Keep your meetings to 30 minutes to 1 hour long. Ask how they're doing with their time. I highly recommend starting off your presentation with a lifestyle video, backstory of who your brand is, where you've come from, and where you're going. Give them a quick idea and put them in the mood for what you're about to present. This will show them how cool your products are and where your brand fits within their organization. 73% of consumers are more likely to purchase a product or service if they can watch a video explaining it beforehand. This also holds true with buyers. I recommend giving a timeline of your business. Show them that you've been around for a while and make them confident that you will be around for a while. If they can see where you've been and where you're going, they're going to become advocates of you and your product. Show lifestyle photos of your products in use. Here's a couple of examples of a product that I own. Make sure that your lifestyle photos are crisp, clear, and on point. Share your successes. What PR have you received? What other stores have already stocked your products? Are you a Kickstarter or Indiegogo success? Give them all the good and important information. Share with them how your product stands out from the competition. I highly recommend doing a product comparison sheet with you versus other existing product lines in your category. Outline exactly how your product is better than others. Don't make this a guessing game for them. Make them very confident that they're making a very pragmatic and analytical decision when bringing in your brand. Paint a picture of how your products will look on their shelves, where they would go, and what other products they're going to be merchandised next to. Go to the store and literally put your product on the shelf and take pictures. Share 3D renderings if you need to. Give the buyer a very strong visual of how the product will sit on their shelves. Negotiate with the buyer. Discuss your asks. What works and what doesn't work. Tell them your price point and talk about how they will purchase. Are they going to be purchasing from you directly, or are they going to be using a distributor? Find out these details. That will alter your margins and their margins. Make sure that you leave them samples and ask for vendor docs. Start the process to getting set up as a vendor in their system. Every single store that you go to is going to have a slightly different culture and different values. Match that culture, match those values, and that will greatly increase your chance of landing your products in their store. There are many different advantages to selling your products to the US market. We're going to discuss all those different advantages and what you need to know in order to take your product here to the United States. So I have Jen here. She's the COO and the founder of Ant Hill Retail. She's actually lived in quite a few different countries in Europe and also in Asia. Jen, what do you know about some of those other countries and any advice that you can give people when they're trying to sell products to the US?
Yeah, we've worked with a lot of brands coming into the United States. One of our toothpaste lines that we've worked with in the past was from out of Australia. They only had a couple of grocery chains that were large enough to get a big dollar amount for them that was worth it, worth going after. But if they're coming into the United States, they have a huge amount of
Very
retailers
decentralized. Yeah.
that they can jump into. For example, we have 397 grocery chains that they have the opportunity to go into, and that's a huge chunk of money for these brands.
I remember that conversation where they were talking about, well, if we either sell to Woolworths or we sell to Kohl's. If we don't sell to one of those two outlets, really we don't have a chance here. But the US is so big and so decentralized, it has such a huge population that actually has buying power. Your chance of selling in the United States is really, really high.
Yeah, especially if you go after a lot of these chains, even if you get one or two, the buying power of these chains are a lot bigger even than the ones from these other countries.
Yeah, great point. Selling to the US should not be a scary proposition. All you need to do right now is validate your market. Reach out to buyers. Ant Hill, we do a great job of this. We bring in 50 different international brands every single year. They first have us do outreach. They validate the market, make sure there's getting enough interest from the buyers before setting up infrastructure in the United States. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's really easy to just kind of send out some emails to see how nice the market is for you.
Yeah,
you don't want to waste a lot of resources, so an easy way to do that nowadays is just through email.
Yeah, it very low cost and just sending out a few samples. You could go ahead and you can track the samples. see what the buyer response is. If it looks like it's a positive response that's going to be worth your time, then set up the necessary pieces to set up the infrastructure in the United
And
States.
if you really are taking the US seriously, you'll probably want to use a fulfillment house to send out these samples that are based in the United States, or you could use a company like Ant Hill Services. We will help you set up an account and send out those UPS tracking of your samples.
Once you've justified bringing your products to the US, you're going to want to set up a new US entity. There's a few good tips and tricks for setting up a US entity. Number one, if you can, set it up as an LLC. It's a limited liability corporation. I guess the equivalent in Europe would be GmbH, for example. So what the great benefits of setting up an LLC is if somebody sues you, if there's a lawsuit for the corporation, it's not going to go through you personally. It stops at suing the company. We also highly recommend being taxed as an S Corp because you're not paying for Social Security, benefits in the United States that you're not going to be receiving later on. So when setting up a U.S. entity, what state should they be considering and why?
Well, there's definitely certain states that are more friendly to corporations and businesses than others. I would say Utah, Nevada, Delaware.
Really trying to keep those business taxes low is critically important. So many of the different brands that are manufacturing products in China, they're going to typically bring in their products to a port like Long Beach. However, setting up a fulfillment house in California may not be as ideal because you want to be able to ship your products quickly across the country. Any good tips or tricks on that?
Definitely stay in the Midwest, and you want to go with a fulfillment house not only to be able to reach your buyers readily, but you also want to do that because of price point. Anything in the Midwest is going to be really favorable for your budget.
Typically setting up a fulfillment house in the Midwest is ideal because the different retailers have many different cross-docks and distribution centers, and you want to typically hit them within a week's time after purchase.
So definitely check out the resource section of this course so that you can find the PDF that talks about what specifics you are looking for when looking for a fulfillment house. It'll give you the ins and outs so that you can make it on a budget.
When selling to the United States, you don't always have to have somebody from the United States be part of the company. You can ship products straight from that country. However, it's strongly urged to set up a U.S. entity and even have a U.S. partner. The reason for this is retailers typically want to work with U.S.-based companies. Doesn't mean the brand or the parent brand has to be a U.S. company, but if they had another company and entity in the United States, just for logistical purposes, it makes it a lot easier on them. Creating an operating agreement with the ownership interests of the company is very critical. You have to know the rules and regulations on how you're going to be playing with each other once you're in the United States. So some examples of why this is important is imagine if one of the business partners wanted to exit, if there's a death. You also need to be able to clarify who owns the patents of the product, if there are any, or who owns the trademarks. And so it really makes it so you're removing all the mess before you even start. A D&B number, Duns and Bradstreet number, is like a credit score for a business. Some specific retailers are going to want to see what your credit history is like. It's not overly used, but people like Walmart will want to use that. Another point that's really important is UPC codes. Don't purchase a resold UPC code. A lot of companies will resell a UPC code that they've sold to many different people. The problem is, using this example, if you're Walmart, is when you set them up in their system, many of their other products might also have that barcode, and so they don't know who to credit it to. So when you purchase your barcodes, use someone like GS1 or Simply Barcodes and make sure that they're not previously purchased barcodes.
Yeah, they're definitely vetted when you go through a company like that.
There are many different shipping ports in the United States. Typically, the United States is Long Beach if you're shipping a product in from China, which most goods are. The equivalent of this in Europe is Rotterdam in the Netherlands, right? So that's where a lot of the different fulfillment houses are. That's typically where they ship out products. In the United States, your fulfillment houses can be anywhere. However, use the ports that are going to be closest to your fulfillment houses. If you're bringing products via the water, sometimes it takes up to 30 days, maybe even longer, especially if there's a Chinese New Year's and there's a little bit of delays. It's not always critical, depending on the weight and the size of your products, to use the cheaper version, which is typically seen as the water version, right? So for example, we have some products that we ship in via China that are lightweight and they're small. It's actually cheaper or just as cheap to air freight them in. And when you do that, you save 3 weeks. Instead of waiting a month for your products, you can get them as low as 3 or 4 or 5 days. Let's dig deeper now on finding the right fulfillment house for your needs. Fulfillment houses have many different hidden charges. Many of them charge you a daily rate on how many pallets you have. Others have certain pick-pack fees in case they're going to be shipping them to the end consumers. Any recommendations that you have on identifying the right fulfillment house?
Definitely make sure when you are finding a fulfillment house that you're not going to be overcharged during that period of time that you have not received an order yet from a buyer. There will be buying seasons, and so it might take 6 to 9 months before you get enough purchases that they are actually going to be selling and sending out your product for you. Definitely make sure that you negotiate at the beginning that they are going to have your best interest at heart and that they understand that it will take some time, and don't be charged for that period of time that you are just storing their product and not sending out samples.
Yeah, that's a great point. The other thing obviously to keep in mind is make sure that the fulfillment house is EDI compliant. So for small stores in the United States, they send their purchase orders through an attachment like a PDF. Larger stores use what's called EDI, Electronic Data Interchange. It's basically their computer from the retailer to your computer. They need to be able to send invoices and returns and everything else through this system. Make sure that your fulfillment house is EDI compliant.
And the big boys like Target and others, they'll only work with you if you are in a warehouse that has EDI. So you don't want to like set yourself up for failure because you've already shipped all your product to the wrong fulfillment center.
Some prominent EDI providers in the United States are people like SPS Commerce or DataTrans. They know the systems and they know the different requirements from shipping to all these different retailers. They have different setup fees that sometimes can be negotiated. Sometimes they have different fees associated with what specific retailers you're setting up. I highly recommend leveraging these different companies against each other and letting them know that, look, some of these costs can be negotiated. I now want to talk about setting up different banking options in the United States. Jen, what are some of the tips and tricks?
When you are setting up an entity here in the United States, make sure that you have done your research and you have a bank that is also in your parent country and also in the United States. So in our example with the toothpaste company, which was in Australia, they were using Bank of America. And we have other clients like in Hong Kong where they're using Chase Bank. You just have to make sure that that is set up properly in the first go around so that you don't have to make a critical error like that.
Yeah, to set up a bank in the United States, you do have to have one legal U.S. citizen in order to do so. The other partners can be from another country, but just make sure that you have one U.S. partner.
Also, I just wanted to mention that if you are working with the U.S. bank here in the United States, it will look better for you and it will be easier for you to transition into these bigger stores here in America. It really builds trust when you do have a U.S. bank. So we've set ourselves up here at Anthill as an owner equity partner. So if you are coming to the United States and you don't have a legal resident that you can use on the paperwork here, you can use a company like ours.
Partnering with Anthill Retail gives you many, many different benefits. Retail buyers trust Anthill. It'll make the process of coming to the United States so much easier and so much more effective. Let's discuss product liability insurance. Retailers require product liability insurance. In case an end consumer has a problem with your product and sues you, product liability insurance will cover this. Product liability insurance can also cover many different things like your inventory. Most retail outlets will ask between $1 and $5 million of liability, although when negotiated, most will just need $1 to $2 million. When considering bringing your product to the United States, just make sure that your country can actually be sold in the United States. There's 5, 6, 7 different countries right now that are not authorized to sell in the United States. Please make sure your country is not on that list. You might be venturing out just a little bit thinking about bringing your products to the United States, but really it's not that difficult. The chance to open up a new revenue source should greatly outpace the potential drawbacks. So now you should feel confident about what you need to know about selling products to the United States.
With a lot of retailers, opening orders are like a logistical tryout. So you want to make sure that your warehouse, your logistics, and your supply chain are on point. One time when we were working with an order worth over $100,000, it was our opening order with the retailer. The brand wasn't able to fulfill the order on time. We were anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks late, and the buyer never wanted to purchase from that brand again. So it's important to understand, especially on opening orders, that your logistics and your lead times are on point. When you work with the buyers and discuss terms, you want to make sure that the lead times are reasonable. You don't want to be strong-armed by a retailer to accept an unreasonable lead time. Know your supply chain, but do your best to do what the retailer needs and work with their inventory planning needs. We've worked with a lot of brands that have too many options, too many variations, and too many colors. That makes it difficult to plan your inventory, which makes it difficult for you to fulfill orders on time. If you pick your colors and you pick your variations carefully to go with what the customer wants, then you can limit your options and still have a lot of success. That allows you to plan what inventory you're going to have in your warehouse and then fulfill orders on time as orders are placed, instead of having to wait for your manufacturer to create the product and then have a longer lead time for the retailer.
Samples aren't always required, but they're much appreciated, and they're going to make you stand out. If you're going to send a sample, make sure that you include a note to the buyer. Thank you for your interest in my brand. Just make yourself stand out. The other one that's on my list that I think is really, really important is for you to put yourself in the perspective of a buyer. If I'm being approached by all of these brands, what makes this brand so special? So put your best foot forward. And what I mean by that is really figure out what makes you unique, whether it's your story, whether it's a unique thing in your product. Whatever makes you unique, make sure that that is what is putting you forward. A few examples for you from brands in the past that we've worked with that I've absolutely loved is they actually did traditional things that we don't think of as much anymore, but that are really important. And those being thank you notes. Thank you so much for your interest in our brand. We look forward to following up with you soon and touching base to see if we could be a good fit for your store. The other main point I want to focus on is making your samples look like your brand. So a lot of brands in the past that haven't done this very well, unfortunately, will just send the item. They won't send anything with it. They'll just send their item, and the buyer will open the box and not know who it's from, what brand it is, and it'll just be a product. So there are some ways to make yourself stand out, and that's one of them, is just include a story of why your brand is what it is. The thank you note that I mentioned before. So having a story for your brand is gonna allow the buyer to have a good feeling of your brand as a whole. And that's just gonna make you stand out. So like earlier I said, buyers are getting approached by a ton of brands each day. And so any little thing that's gonna make you be different at the end of the day is gonna be a benefit. So take the time, use your resources, be creative, and make yourself stand out.
Let's talk about the retailer timeline. It's really important in this section to be able to talk about proper expectations. The natural tendency in most industries is for a fast sell-through and a fast sell cycle. That's just not the case in retail sales, specifically in the United States. Selling products to retail is a multi-year proposition, depending if you're selling to a small mom and pop shop, a regional chain, a distributor, or a national retailer. A typical sales cycle for a larger retail chain is 6 months to a year. There's nothing you can do to speed up that sales cycle. Retail buyers have a specific POG, a planogram, a 4-foot section. They have to figure out in this planogram products that they're going to be deleting, products they're going to be adding in. This takes time. Have proper expectations, otherwise you're going to be wildly disappointed. Imagine you're a retail buyer. Each day you open up your inbox and you have 250 brands that are all trying to vie for a spot in your store. Most brands have unrealistic expectations. They think, boy, there's so much shelf space. Certainly our product can get in the store. What they don't understand is that 95% of the product in the store remains year after year.
That's right. And a lot of times when you have a new company and a new brand, they are so excited about their product. They think their product is the best. And so they get big eyes thinking like, of course, everybody's going to want us. And that may be the case, but still buyers have constraints that they have to work with. They only have, like Jeremy said, 5% window of things that they're going to switch out, things that they need to switch out because of problem areas, problem products that haven't been moving as fast as they want. So the 5% out of that, 3% of that 5% is going to still be different SKUs from the big boys like Colgate or Crest. So you're fighting essentially for 2% of that shelf space. And that, you can imagine, is going to be a really big fight. You have to have everything really buttoned up so that you can present to a buyer and they can trust you enough to give you that 2% on their shelf.
That's right. At Ant Hill Retail, and what we recommend for your brand is to put as many lines in the water as possible. If you're going after that 2% and you're going against hundreds of other products and dozens of other brands, be realistic that you might not get that shot. The way you're going to win is by opening up conversations with buyers across the entire channel.
And throughout the year, you have to keep constant conversation and new conversation with these buyers and remain relevant in their minds so that they can think of you when their slot opens up and when it's their time to buy.
Let's expand on the average sales cycle for a national chain. Typically the case is most retail chains have one review date per year. The other opportunity that you may have with a specific retailer is a cut-in date, where they're going to be deleting bad products mid-year. Overall, not every product is reviewed every year, and certainly not every product is reviewed multiple times a year.
The cut-in is a really good thing that you can sometimes slide into, but it's very rare that you would get that spot, so you need to not rely on a cut-in date.
Let's be realistic about the timeline in retail. I like to use the analogy of a farming harvest. Typically in farming, what you're doing is you're planting all the seeds for the year. What you should not be doing is anticipating a big harvest after month 1 or 2. This is a very, very common mistake. In fact, those seeds are growing, but most times they're growing underground. The roots are spreading, things are being accomplished, but yeah, you're not getting purchase orders. If you have an improper idea about the harvest, you're going to be making bad decisions based on that information.
I'll just add that you want to be very careful on how much inventory you do buy and don't overbuy thinking that it's going to be so easy to get into retail or that your buying season will happen right around the corner. You want to wait and get those relationships started with your buyers, get the conversations flowing and stay relevant, and then consider what your inventory should be or what it may look like for this year, for the buying year.
The way Ant Hill wins and the way that you will win is get as many lines in the water as possible, meaning reach out to as many retail outlets as possible so you're more likely to land those spots. Only 3% of salespeople are trusted nationwide among all industries. Be determined to beat the odds. One way you can do this in retail sales is by not acting like a Cutco door-to-door salesman. All of your phone call conversation and all your email conversation should be a professional B2B type of email, B2B type of phone call. Don't ever act as if you're grateful to be there.
You want to make sure that you are playing as if you were an equal player, but still be respectful. You don't want to act like you're a beggar and that you're like begging for crumbs. You have an awesome product and you have every right to present to a buyer. Just make sure you're being respectful and that you're having expectations that are appropriate for the situation.
Yeah, just to finalize on that point, what you're trying to do is you're trying to make this an analytical sell for the buyer. You're trying to give them sell-through numbers. You're trying to make them look like you're going to be competent. This is a good move. This is going to be worth their time to delete a product, spend 4 or 5 months setting you up in the system as a vendor, only because you're going to be selling more than that previous brand.
And you're going to be easy to work with and somebody that they can trust, a company that they can trust.
Yes. In retail, only 24% of email communication is even opened. Only 2% is responded to. Keep that in mind. We ran an analysis last year over 2 months, and we realized it's 8 times more efficient to call a buyer than to be emailing that buyer.
You get lost a lot of times in their inbox. Even if you have a really catching subject header or a short, precise email that will be easy to respond to, it's always best to follow up those emails and even precede those emails with a phone call. And even if you catch them on their voicemail, at least they'll know and they'll start catching on to your name that you are calling and that you're not going away, that you have a reputable product that they should look at.
On average, it takes 18 phone calls to land a sale. We have found that on average, and depending by the channel, we have to make 3 outbound calls in order to have a 2-minute substantial dialogue with a buyer. Let me provide a tip to parlay your dialogues. Get a warm conversation going with a current buyer that you're having with a different product line or a buyer that you know, and have them reference your product. those are always going to get responded better than without it.
And on average, it takes 18 calls before you actually get anywhere or any momentum with a buyer. So if you keep that in mind, also think about how long, like you can't call a buyer every day. So those 18 calls can't be in 1 month, obviously. So if you're taking 18 calls to get somewhere with a buyer, that's going to be over like 4 or 5 months in order to not bug them enough that they're going to be putting you on their blacklist.
That's a great point. I would actually just reference 1 or 2 times specifically in the week that you're going to have specific follow-up. Anyway, this has been a great dialogue, a great discussion about setting a proper realistic expectation on the retail buyer timeline.